This is a Juki Sierra 3400, a typewriter that I am very excited to get to finally share with you. And that's because it has a feature that I find extremely interesting. But the feature itself isn't what is interesting. It's that it's in something that is not an IBM. The Juki Sierra follows in the footsteps of the computer industry and made a 100% IBM compatible Selectric typewriter. Now, before we get too far into this video, I should let you know that this typewriter has some flaws that I'm going to be working around. The carriage mechanism doesn't move correctly as it should, and the return locks up the carriage sometimes. I've traced these problems back to a plastic gear over here that seems to be some kind of split gear pulley system on a spline, and I'm guessing the tooth for the plastic gear has sheared off of the spline and it no longer properly rotates. I speculate this because if I just take a flathead screwdriver, I can rotate this and get it back into working condition. I can also just put a finger next to the carriage and make it work correctly as well. So I'm going to simulate this thing working for this video, but it's not fully functional. Now, from all of my questing for one of these, they haven't seemed too rare. I think I've seen 5 different examples of them, but I haven't found another one since I took delivery of this one almost a year ago now, so I haven't really had any better options come up, and I've decided I'm just gonna stop waiting because really the whole story about the machine and how it works rather than how this one works is what makes it really special. And also, my original plan for a video this week didn't turn out. Turns out Commodore power supplies suck even when they're for Amigas. Now, having an honest-to-goodness Selectric type ball in here may not seem like that big of a deal, but it's hard to overstate just how prominent Selectrics were in the typewriter industry when this thing came out. And getting a slice of that industry was the main goal of the designer behind this typewriter. Now, I only have one source for the real history of this machine, but it is Forbes from 1982. This typewriter was originally designed by Thomas O'Reilly, who worked as a typewriter distributor. He saw the outrageous market demand for IBM typewriters exclusively and figured that there must be a market for a Selectric compatible typewriter that was half the cost. A Selectric typewriter at that time cost you about $1,000. This is 1982 money, for the record. And he figured if he could come in with one that was about $500, he could make a huge dent in their market. Now, O'Reilly raised capital on his own to design and develop a prototype for this typewriter and took it to Juki in Japan. Juki has been around for a while as a manufacturing company. They're very well known for their sewing machines, for example, which was a very common sibling product for typewriter manufacturers. They were also manufacturing typewriters for Olivetti as well, so this wasn't too far out for them. Fun fact though, Olivetti also made a typewriter that I have an example of called the Lexicon that used a type element as well. But that one is not a true IBM compatible. There were a couple of typewriter manufacturers that used IBM-like type elements. The Juki, being a full outright clone, is unique as far as I'm aware. Now, Juki clearly thought this was a good idea as well, so they took O'Reilly's prototype and designed the Sierra that we have here. Juki maintained manufacturing and distribution rights and paid O'Reilly a royalty for every one of these sold. Now, you'd think that this would upset IBM, but there doesn't seem to be any record of any legal action happening. Matter of fact, O'Reilly's typewriter distribution company later became an official distributor for IBM type elements, which I'm guessing they didn't use with Selectrics. So it didn't really seem to be a problem for IBM. That could just be because after this released in 1983, IBM would release the Wheelwriter that would just outclass the Selectric in every possible way. Now, Juki did make their own type elements. I have a Juki brand Pica, not really sure, 10 here, and an Elite 12 there. The 10 and 12 relate to the pitch of characters for that type element. Now, the example I have here seems to only be a 12. I believe there was a Juki 3500 that came out after this that is an electronic typewriter that had a selectable character pitch. So this one doesn't actually go with this machine. It would probably work, but the characters might crowd each other a little bit. Now, to demonstrate just how IBM compatible this really is, let me take off this Juki type element and put on an original IBM Selectric one. This is also a 12-point character one, and it fits on there just fine. Other typewriters that aren't fully Selectric compatible would have issues retaining the type element correctly, and they just would not work well. Looking at the type balls here, we can see $, $, $, $. The character order is identical between these two type elements. So this is really, truly a full outright clone. Also, I didn't know this one was completely unused. Wow, that's kind of pretty. Now, the Juki would work in the exact same way, and the ball will rotate, lift up, and strike the paper as you type. Now, unfortunately, this has developed another issue since I got it, I think, and it doesn't seem like it's rotating the type element correctly. This is A, S, D, F, and that's not working right. Now, it's almost poetic that the Juki here actually has an issue with the plastic gear and with rotating the type ball, because two issues that plague Selectrics now are cracking the main drive gear that the belt runs on that causes a thumping now when you run the machine, and the tilt pulley for the type element also breaking. So I had initially hoped when I got one of these that maybe these would be more reliable than the IBM because they would have fixed some of the issues that IBM put in it nearly 2 decades earlier. But no, it appears to have very similar issues. So there are no really truly reliable Selectrics out there. Now, I was incredibly lucky and managed to get the manual for the typewriter recently as well, although this is for the 3300. But I think the only difference between the 3300 and the 3400 is this key that is missing from this photo in the 3300. This is for correcting, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But correcting is kind of a big feature to have, so it's not too surprising they split that between the 3300 and 3400. IBM also made exclusive correcting versions of their Selectrics. Now, the other really funny thing about this manual, which I'll get this scanned and uploaded after this video, I don't have time to do that beforehand, is the style of the manual. Now, unfortunately, I think all of my IBM manuals are in storage, but this is almost exactly a ripoff of an IBM manual. It is hilarious. The layout, the presentation, the 2-color print, it is so IBM Selectric manual. It is amazing. But yeah, I didn't find anything too exciting in here, unfortunately. There are the usual features that you would have for a typewriter from this era, and it really is mostly just a clone of a Selectric, so there isn't anything too unexpected in here. But it is really cool to finally have this, and like I said, I'll get this scanned so more information about this typewriter can be preserved, because it is such a weird, fascinating machine. No, I didn't get the dust cover, and also, what on earth is up with that outlet? Now, let's talk about correcting, which is something I'm a huge nerd about if you've seen my 2-part series on how typewriters did correcting. This also relates to the cartridge on the Juki, though, because the Juki uses a split black and white correcting cartridge. Now, if you're familiar with a Selectric, you would know that it uses a ribbon like this. Although, if I remember correctly, the Selectric 1 ribbon, I think this is different from the Selectric 2 and 3, which share the same one. I'm pretty sure that's the Selectric 1 ribbon. Forgive me, it's been a little while since I've had my Selectrics out. But this does not have correcting on the ribbon. Correction on a Selectric is done with tape on a spool that you attach to the carriage, which is completely different, again, from how the Juki works. Now, the Juki has a whiteout tape on here, which is going to be very similar to correct type tabs here. This is just white that gets plastered onto the paper, covering what you had made a mistake of. Now, unfortunately, these are not these, and that makes the Juki Sierra type ribbons completely unique, and as far as I'm aware, the 3300 and the 3400 are the only models that use this exact typewriter spool. Now, thankfully, I lucked out pretty hard and got a complete case of these for me to use with my, you know, non-functional typewriter. But hey, I can dream. And actually, I think I saw 5 boxes of these on eBay right now. So these don't seem to be that common. Again, I suspect that this thing had a very short life since the Wheelwriter would have come out and utterly decimated it shortly after this. Speaking of the Wheelwriter though, this has some characteristics that are shared with that and that are unique compared to other Selectrics. Now, the Juki shares its case construction with the Wheelwriters. This is plastic. The Selectric has a metal case. Now, that may sound like a downgrade, but the Juki being plastic means that it's actually not impossible to lift it, whereas the Selectrics are obscenely heavy. It's not really a feature on those. It's kind of excessive overkill. So having this be plastic is actually kind of nice. Now, another comparison with the Juki and most Selectrics is its platen size. Now, the Juki here is standard US letter sized with a little bit extra on the side, whereas most Selectrics are a full width platen that is a lot bigger. This makes the Juki here a much more manageable size for home uses. Now, this is interesting because there were a handful of small Selectrics. The Model 1 especially came in a personal size typewriter, but that one didn't have correcting. It wasn't until the 2 and 3 that correcting was added, but those were not offered in a personal size typewriter. Except the 2 was actually released not branded as a Selectric, but as an IBM personal typewriter that was actually a small personal size correcting Selectric 2. Hi, yes, I'm Shelby. I'm a giant typewriter nerd. Those are actually my photos of an IBM personal typewriter. I was so excited when I finally found one of those after looking for years, but it has a bad tilt pulley because just like, I can never have nice things. Now, the whole keyboard on the Juki here is just a straight up ripoff of the Selectric. It's not even close to trying to be unique, but that's fine, because it's kind of cool still having it be like that. Now, the aspirations of the Juki here were very transparent in being a Selectric clone. There weren't too many reviews of it, but here is one from Popular Science where they tell you the Juki Sierra electric typewriter has an 88-character keyboard and a snap-in corrective ribbon cartridge. The Japanese-made machine can use all IBM Selectric ball typing elements. It says Juki and then gives you their address and the price and weight of the machine, which this machine did succeed in its goal at coming in at half of the cost of a Selectric at $495. With all that said, this really was a pretty complete Selectric clone, and any other features that I haven't mentioned here that you might have noticed are basically the same as a Selectric. These can be used to set the page margins. We have an end-of-line bell. We can clear and set tab margins and go to different tab spacings. It has the power space, which I've demonstrated, that is a 2 pressure position spacebar. It really is a shame that this one's broken, and that the way it's broken is going to put me off of trying to get another one of these. I'm really nervous that that gear broke because the grease wasn't properly maintained in the machine, and it tried to apply too much force to it when it was powered up to test to sell, and it sheared the gear right before I got it. And I suspect that would happen to many of these. I don't know that it's going to be systemic, but it seems like it could be. But that is the Juki Sierra 3400 here, and that is everything I have to say about it. I hope you enjoyed a quick look at a weird little typewriter that I find absolutely fascinating. And if you did, you may want to subscribe to the channel, because I'm sure I'll talk more about typewriters in the future. If you want to help support the channel, you can find me on Patreon. But for now, that's it, and I will see you next time.